Is myself, Mike Ergo, first selectman, Nita Kincaid, selectwoman, Bob Carlson, selectman, Christine Dias, admin finance for the town, and Juliet Hodge, planner for the town, as panelists. The first item on the agenda, number 2, would be public comments on agenda and non-agenda items. We respectfully ask that comments do not exceed 2 minutes in respect for everyone's time. And if you would like to make a comment, Bailey will handle the comments.
Okay, see Brett Mastriani, you're recognized.
Hi, it's Brett Mastriani. Just looking at the agenda and seeing the agenda item for selectmen's expenses. I'm glad to see that there was a policy that you guys are looking at, but I do think that you guys should have a look back at the past few years' expenses. Looking through the list, it looks like there's some questionable expenditures on there, ranging from coffees to, more importantly, some fundraising events that happened that kind of skirt the budgeting process when we're donating to certain nonprofits. So there's line items budgeted for these nonprofits, but when we pick and choose to go to some of their events and pay $150 a ticket for 2 years to go to these events, it kind of skirts that process. And I'm also disappointed to see that while it's a great, Always Home is a great cause, it makes it a little questionable that, again, we're mixing
No. Brett, it seems your sound is cut out. Bailey, why don't you move on to the next one?
Okay. Phone number ending in, what is it? Oh, geez, it moved. 9339. You're recognized.
Hey, that must be me.
It's you.
Sergey, right? Mike, I just want to ask a question. When I can talk now, it says probably on the agenda, non-agenda items. That means that after this time, I won't be able to talk to the end of the meeting. Am I correct?
Correct.
All right, I'm gonna talk. It's probably gonna take me a little bit longer. I'm gonna ask you guys not to go back with any changes to your budget. As far as I'm concerned, I think they took $333,000 and everything that the Board of Finance wanted to make changes to, they took it out of the Board of Selectmen's budget. And I believe, as I told them, your purpose here is to be the administrators of the town. And I'd like to see the Board of Selectmen put their budget out, directing it as the town needs it, and not to put it out so that the taxpayers pass it. And other than that, I have nothing more to say because I'll be on here a lot longer than 2 minutes. So if you get done and I have any other more time left, I appreciate it. But I'm going to submit to anybody else to do their talk, okay?
She's the one she never keeps quiet. So,
Thanks, Joe.
she just took a, because it says, yeah, that's not that, instead of listening, if you put it
Okay. Seeing no other comments, we'll move on to agenda item number 3. Solar litigation and scientific testimony. So just for a little clarity, this is regarding the solar project that's happening on 184. The selectmen had, along with many other folks, did a walk of the property. We were made aware that the public comment period would be pretty short. We did get an extension to allow comments further. And at the urging of, I think, planning and zoning, as well as our Juliet, who's here, and our attorney, and many residents, we were urged to do what we could to make sure that we're looking at everyone's best interest as it relates to this project. So what was recommended was that we have a soil scientist come in and do some analysis of the situation. And we were, through Juliet's hard work, it wasn't easy. We were able to find somebody that was able to give some testimony, which we have utilized in what Juliet has submitted as far as comments. She's submitted 2 sets of comments. We already approved comments that we submitted to the Siting Council as well. Now, this was obviously had to be done quickly. So I want to make sure we put this on the agenda so that we were up to speed on where the process was with regards to the project, but also the fact that CLA Engineers was retained to do the scientific analysis, and there was a cost associated with that, which is unbudgeted. What I'm going to recommend, as they are an engineering firm, is that we allocate the Selectmen's engineering funds to that purpose. So I'll look for the Selectmen to give an approval on that tonight. But Julia, I don't know if you want to give a little bit more detail as far as the findings.
I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, first of all, it should be noted that the town attorney did ask for a public hearing, which is not easy to get sometimes with the Siting Council. So we were awarded a public hearing, which means we do have to show up with expert testimony, and that doesn't mean me. I mean, I will testify too, but you can't go before the Siting Council and talk about environmental issues if you don't have an expert witness. So we had to hire a soil scientist and somebody who could analyze the habitat on the northern side and the southern side. So it's sort of necessary. So this person, Bob Russo, is also going to testify in front of the Siting Council as well. So it's more than just giving a report. He then has to, or will give additional comments in front of the Siting Council and sort of critique the existing environmental reports that are on file. So the initial public comment period did pass. I did submit a second set of comments that had to do with the history of the project and sort of the original intention of the project was to reuse the brownfields gravel site and gravel bank, and that's not what this project is. So that'll be one of the focuses of my testimony. And then Bob Russo did feel, and I agree, obviously, that the vernal pool and wetlands habitats on the northern parcel, the parcel that's above north of 184, far out are far more valuable than any of the vernal pools and the man-made vernal pools in the gravel bank portion of the property. So that will be another avenue that we are going to pursue, and also the amount of buffers that they offered around vernal pools and wetlands are well below what we would normally see. So that's where the arguments will center on that. You can't really talk about everything. You can't even talk about forests really, because the Siting Council isn't going to listen to that argument necessarily. So we really do have to focus on the wetlands, the habitat, the vernal pools, and then I can bring up the original intent of the solar project and suggest that they make it smaller to fit on the gravel bank area. I mean, it's not my fault that they're not going to make a profit. What we're saying is that we're not against solar projects, but we do feel that the preservation of rural character is important, and not having industrial uses, the middle of a residential zone is important. So I tied it back to the POCD as best I could and suggested that they just make it a smaller project and put it where it was originally supposed to be, where they originally thought it was technically feasible. So I think it's a really, reasonable ask on our part. We obviously supported other projects. So I don't know, fingers crossed, but we do need Bob Russo. We absolutely have to have Bob Russo testify. I cannot do that. I don't qualify. Somebody else has to do it. So.
Selectmen have questions for Juliet or general dialogue on this topic? Go ahead, Bob.
Just general. I think it's, thank you, Julia, for doing that legwork, and thank you for Mike for pursuing this. I think we owe it to the the people, our citizens down there that live off 184. There's a lot of concern. Also concerned with the town maintaining its rural character. So anything we can do to make this work sounds great. What was the, do we know what the fee is, Mike? Are you going to discuss that later? What the,
I think what I'd look for tonight, so we know that the fee was about $2,100 for the analysis that's been done. We think there's probably going to be, it's likely Bob's going to have to make an appearance, and there's probably going to be a fee associated with that as well. So I think what I'd probably do tonight is look for a motion to approve the selectmen's expenses in the amount of up to $2,500, which is what's budgeted there for this purpose. And then if we have to exceed that, then we'll figure out where we'll get it from.
Was that the motion you just made then or not?
Yeah, if you can make that motion, just like I said it, if you want.
So moved your motion.
Okay.
Second.
Second from Nita. Further discussion?
Can I just ask a question? I'm sorry, are you taking this out of Selectmen's engineering or are you taking this out of town hall?
Engineering. Selectmen's engineering. CLA is an engineering firm, so it's appropriate. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
And that public hearing is June 8th, by the way, I believe.
Very good.
Michael, who will go to the public hearing, yourself and Juliet? Anybody else besides Mr. Russo?
I'm sure Rob Avina will be there as well. And it's a public hearing, so I think probably anybody can attend that wants to.
So affected homeowners would be able to attend also?
Yeah, there's two portions of it. So there's the like 2:30 in the afternoon. The first portion is just the town attorney, myself, and the soil scientist. And I'm not sure about Mike, maybe, but that's for the evidence and discovery portion. So since the selectman did write a letter, you could conceivably be asked. And then the public hearing portion starts at 6:30, and you have to sign up ahead of time. And I think it was a week ahead of time, by June 1st. Anybody who wanted to speak at that had to register or announce that they were going to be interested in speaking so that they could be sent the link.
What day does that fall on? June 8th?
Yeah, everything's out in the siting council. I'll probably try to put together something and at least get it to the, the surrounding homeowners there, obviously, but just to make sure everybody knows what the process is.
What day does that fall on, Juliet?
June 8th is a Tuesday.
And that's 6:30 in the evening, I believe, right?
Yeah, don't quote me on the date. Absolutely. I'd have to pull it back up, but I think that's what it is.
It may be, we may have to discuss moving our meeting if
Let me look it up.
because that's a regular on Board of Selectmen's meeting night too. So we'll have to talk about it when the time comes. But no, good job, Juliet, on this. And I think we're trying to be fair to everybody here as best as we can, but we try to look out for everyone's interests. So I think it's been a fair process, and hopefully we can come up with some sort of solution. Hopefully Siting Council comes up with some sort of solution that, everybody can live with. So we'll see.
It is June 8th.
All right, moving on then. Number 4, 96 Button Road Conservation Commission discussion. So in your packet, we had received some suggested changes to the Attorney General's wording regarding the 96 Button Road, which was known as Firefly Farm. There had been monitoring requirements that were in place, and Chairman Bill Ricker is on the phone. I don't know if you guys want a little color added by Bill on his request here to change this. If that's all right, I'd ask Bill to just give a little bit of background on this so he can explain why they're looking for the change, and then if we want to proceed with the change. So, Bill, you're recognized if you're available.
Am I able to be heard?
Yes.
Okay. It's been about 10 years ago that the Conservation Commission was asked to monitor all of the conservation easements and open space in town. Nita, Bob Flurry, and I did the honcho work to make sure all of these were well documented. And the outstanding one is the Firefly Farm, which came in well after we had completed our work, and is a bit of an anomaly in that there was a contentious relationship between the principals of Firefly Farm and our administration at the time, which eventually went to, without going into any further details, it finally went to court, and the Attorney General made the decision that the acreage that was once to be deeded to North Stonington, and the rights to that were given away by that administration. And then we stepped back in to try to secure it again as open space, conservation easement. So long story short, the Attorney General made the decree that this should be monitored twice yearly, January and June, by a minimum of 3 members of the town to be notified to Firefly Farm a week in advance by registered letter that they would be coming out to observe the property and see that the deed was being adhered to. We did this, have done this for the past approximately 5 years, longer, 6, 7 years. The relationship between those of us who have gone out to monitor the property and Firefly has been an excellent one, and one to the point where I brought up to the principals, can we perhaps modify this anomaly? Every other public space in town or private conservation easements are monitored now every 5 years, and here this one is to be monitored twice yearly. And I emphasized in that material to you, this is in perpetuity. This is forever that we're to do this. Wanting to bring this back into compliance with the rest of our CEs and open space, we developed that wording in that document you have in your possession. The top part of it is the wording as it exists in that section. It's an extensive section of numerous pages, but the one section that pertains to this you have in front of you. The top part is the wording as it exists with the highlighted in yellow recommended changes, and the bottom half of it is the portion which we would like to change it to. Now, who can do this? The Attorney General can do it. How does it get there? It's my understanding that we have to do a, Julie, help me with the wording, a friendly lawsuit, a friendly suit?
Yeah, friendly suit or friendly amendment.
A friendly amendment. So the town needs to go to the Attorney General, wanting to be sure we are doing the right thing, because none of us on the Conservation Commission have legal experience. It seems best that if you approve this, to have it go to our town attorney, have them look it over, and then do whatever he needs to do in sending this forward to the Attorney General for his decision.
Thank you, Bill, for that detailed explanation of what is in front of us. Nita, Bob, comments?
Bill, the way it's written here was a result of the judgment, wasn't it? It was not like some of the other ones where we made decisions about the properties. Is that correct?
Oh, that's correct. This is totally independent of any other one that we have in our portfolio.
Right, and So when I read it, I thought to myself, maybe we're pushing it too hard. And I hate to say that. I know how lovely it is to run around and look at everything, but I really, I was wondering with the Google Earth and stuff like that, if we couldn't leave it at maybe every 2 years looked at that way in some way, just because it isn't necessary, it isn't possible to know how long these people will be keeping this piece of land.
Well, that's right, Nita. It is up for sale. And as you know, anything that is decided goes with the property. So if another entity purchased Firefly Farm, they would be purchasing it with the understanding that that 38 acres is in a private conservation easement and would be monitored in some manner, whether it is twice yearly as currently exists, or as we're asking for once every 5 years. Let me tell you about flyovers. We have investigated trying to do all of these conservation easements and open space parcels with what's the damn helicopter that's used, the thing that's on Mars right now that's taken off.
Drones.
A drone, thank you. I was blocking on the name. And there is a state law which prohibits a municipality from using a drone over the top of any private property. They can fly the circumference of the property, but they can only take pictures of anything that could normally be seen by the road. So we have abandoned any possibility of using a drone and are depending on Google Earth. We are depending on the word of the landholder. Are you doing anything inside that property? No, we are not. And then we verify it with Google Earth. So there's a verification process, but it's first an honest question and answer that we're asking for.
Oh, just to finish my thoughts about it, and not knowing the kind of person who is coming in and so forth, and what they're going to come, how they're going, what they're going to use the property for, I would kind of be concerned about doing it until the new person is in place.
Well, and then you'll have a new person after that and a new person after that. This is in perpetuity for the rest of history. So no one can ever be assured whether this administration will remain a friendly administration, nor the other party. So we have this is a fail-safe, in my estimation, a fail-safe means of checking on it, because we're also saying we have the right to go out at any time, as long as we notify them in advance that we're going out to check on the property. By the way, this 38 acres is very wet, swampy. I've walked it and received tick bites through it. The principals that walked with us fell into the stream as we were trying to look at the property. It's something that is not going to be used for roads or pasture or any
Anything.
building. It's really just open space.
Way
Bob,
too
do you-
wet to be used. It's way too wet.
Bob, do you have any comments on this?
Yeah, Bill, with the way inspecting the property through Google Earth, are you satisfied that you're getting a good and thorough inspection that way? Are you happy with the results, that you can see what you need to see?
Here's what we do with every one of the properties, Bob. We compare it to the past Google Earth picture and look for any anomaly. Look for anything that wasn't there before. And if we cannot zoom in and see what it is, then we have the right to go into the property and take a closer look. So in one case, we saw what looked like just a large rock. We went in and we found it was an abandoned automobile that was on the property, and simply, without any fanfare, simply said, you really should move that. And they went and did it. So we have a means of making sure that what is happening to every one of these properties can be verified by us going in and observing it with our own eyes.
Well, Bill, as the chairperson of the Conservation Committee, and you seem comfortable with it, then I wouldn't want to be the one standing in your way. It makes sense to me. So, yeah, Mike, I have no other questions.
Yeah, I don't, I understand your concerns, Nita, that you raised. I know you were pretty intimately familiar with this as well. But I do think that given what the policies are as it relates to the monitoring of all the other properties, it seems like this shouldn't really necessarily be an anomaly. And I think it was only an anomaly because of the contentious nature of this whole process years ago. It sounds like this land really can't probably be used for anything else anyway. So I don't see a lot of risk here. And I think if it makes it more manageable for our volunteers to just put it in line with everything else, I don't see any issue with it. So I would.
And we're not assured that this will be approved by the Attorney General.
No, but I mean, if it's a friendly suit and there's an agreement from leadership here, we should, hopefully it's a little bit more likely. I mean, Nita, are you going to be opposed to doing this, or is there something that you need that?
I feel like I'm going to abstain, actually.
Okay.
Not vote.
Okay. Well, I don't see anything that would cause me concern for it. I'd motion that we approve the suggested changes to the Attorney General's wording as presented by the Conservation Commission as it relates to 96 Button Road.
I second that motion.
Further discussion on it? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained?
Abstain, please.
Nita
Yeah.
abstains. Okay. All right. Motion carries 2-0-1. Bill, thank you.
Yep.
We'll send this over to the attorney to see what the process would be.
Can you ask that the attorney keep the Conservation Commission informed of any changes he may make before he submits it to the Attorney General?
I will keep you informed via the
Okay.
attorney. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, number 5. So we have these two grants, 5 and 6, which we have resolutions in our packet. So Juliet, I don't know if you want to take the opportunity to give a little bit of detail to this, and then so we all know kind of what we're getting into here.
Yep. All right, so most people know the history of the Gallup House and how it came to be in the town's possession. And as part of that sale, the deed has a clause in it that says that we have to maintain the 1750s farmhouse. There were 3 structures on the property. It just has that restriction on the farmhouse. So with that in mind, the Hewitt Farm Committee, there's a lot of process into figuring out what the uses of the property should be. And they did a lot of work after the renters were not evicted, but after the town decided not to continue to rent the property in 2018, a lot of, painting and some minor repair work was done with the intention of fixing it up to find a more suitable tenant, whether that be a caretaker or somebody like a Chamber of Commerce or, some other use of the building. And that original RFP, there were no responses. So we decided, or the town decided and voted to go after a planning and a survey and planning grant, which is an unmatched grant that SHPO provides, so that we could do a feasibility study and a conditions assessment of the house so that we could better direct any funding to fix priority items still with the hopes of finding a more appropriate tenant for the house. So we thought we'd try to, take a stab at determining what we thought a better use for the property would be and work that up and figure out what restoration work would need to happen to make that happen. So that work is complete. The report is out. We have, various scenarios and an estimate of restoration work that's got a particularly high price tag. That's if everything was done. So seeing that number, the Hewitt Farm Committee did meet and decided on some key items, like priority items that would need to be fixed, partially because they're structural. The back porch has a beam that's, if somebody knocked into it, it would fall on them, and the roof would fall on them. So that literally has to be fixed. And then the windows, the broken windows, to better secure the house against vandalism, and should it be vacant in the winter, you would certainly want storm windows installed and the window panes fixed and things like that, so it doesn't cost as much. So the SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, suggested that we apply for a second survey and planning grant, again, because it's now no matching fund is needed, which is a gift, to convert the report that was given to us that has estimates. I mean, it does identify some of the work that needs to be done, but they're just estimates, and work those into full construction bid ready documents. That's what we have to have in order to apply for any of the restoration work to be done in the future. So if we decide we want to do the windows, we have to have an architect, a historic architect, prepare these construction documents so we can go out to bid. So the suggestion and the idea was have Lothrop take their estimate and turn them into this document for all of the work that they identified, so that we would own those construction documents. We could put them in a closet, we could put them in the trash, we could put them up on a shelf, or we could put them on the desk. Whatever we wanted to do with them, we'd have them. And then as the funding became available through the budget process, we could apply for restoration grants, which are a 50-50 match as we go along. So that gives the town time to decide what they want to do with the house in the future, if anything, but it gives us that opportunity to get that initial priority work done, because that really does need to be done. You do have it in your deed that you have to do some basic maintenance on the house. This would count. Structural issues certainly have to be fixed. And it would hopefully allow you, you couldn't put somebody in a house where you have now identified structural problems, because the liability there made the attorney immediately uncomfortable when I told him about it. So that, I would recommend that we go after that, the planning and survey grant, to get our construction documents, just to have them on hand, and then to apply for that initial $40,000 worth of work, 20 of which would be paid for by the state. Also a great opportunity, and at least get the structural things fixed. And that also, I think we added on, correct me if I'm wrong, Nita, the electrical system. And if we didn't, we should figure that one out.
Okay.
Just to make sure it's, not a fire hazard and whatnot. So that's what we're doing. The applications are due now, and we need the resolutions on file as part of that application process. And again, we have 10,000 in the budget this year. We have 10,000 proposed for the budget next year. Should the town never fund it again, I mean, that's up to the town. But right now, I think we should use that money to fix the glaring, immediately necessary work, to fix the windows and the roof issue with the beam, so that we stand a chance of ever getting somebody in there. And we do have some volunteers, just for the record, that are working on the fence, for example, just, volunteering their time and talent to do that. And I'm sure the Hewitt Farm Committee will continue to look for people to do that. And they too could also use these construction documents as a guide as to how to do it properly. I mean, it doesn't have to be a contractor. So it's definitely that non-matching grant to have the construction documents done, I think, is just a must to have them in our possession, so that we can make decisions in the future that are more educated. And we can also use it to create a capital improvement plan for the house, which I think was originally suggested, as I was reading in the survey that was done in 2008, I guess it was, that was the idea, to have a plan in place to do the repairs that was approved every year. So this will allow us to do that with accuracy versus us guessing what it's going to cost. So.
Thank you, Juliet. So I know, this house over the years has been, we recognize it was an issue. We've made some repairs as we've kind of gotten further into it. It's done, we're realizing that there's some more issues that are kind of important that we actually have to take care of before we would probably want to put somebody in this house, whoever the occupant is. And this is a means for us to, get some funding to potentially do that. So I am aware that, there's certain people in town that would, or would like to have already seen revenue coming in, and I'm one of them as well. But, when you're a town, you have to do things the right way. You can't not, so.
And I would encourage people to consider this grant money as revenue, because you couldn't put somebody in that house right now. So you can't have that revenue. So this is actually revenue coming in to fulfill your obligation via the deed to make it, a viable structure, so to speak, or maintain it in some fashion. So it is revenue.
But, and that's a great point. And besides that, Juliet, this is what we consider to be a treasure of North Stonington. And so we certainly want to make sure we're being good stewards of our town treasures. So with that, Bob, Nita, questions on this topic?
Yeah, Julia, can you go over again how much money is left in the UF farm account from this year that was budgeted for this year? I know you said there was 10, but I thought it was closer to 19,000.
No, you have you have some money that's for general operations or something to that effect.
$1,000, and we have spent where there's about 300 left, 3,000 left, excuse me, which we are planning to use for a couple of things right away before the end of the year. And then we have the 10,000 in the account that we've been having for 2 years. One's gone, but we have the 10,000 for this year still, and we have 10,000 in the requested budget. So that would be where the money would be coming from.
Bob, we haven't paid out the final invoice for Lothrop, which is why it looks like there's 19 in there.
Yeah, that's the 19. The 9.
Yeah, because you allocated funds to cover the grant that then gets reimbursed.
That's true. Another question is, reading the ordinance on the land acquisition fund, doesn't the ordinance say that we could use monies from that line item if need be to fix or repair town property?
Yes.
I mean, so that would be another source of revenue, a source of monies if we needed them to match a grant down the road, correct?
Well, it's good to know.
Yeah, if it goes to a town meeting, if the ordinance reads that way, that would be an opportunity, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's
No, I have no other questions. Thank you.
Nita, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I think that we're on the right track right now, at least.
Okay. So what we'd need is, there's 2 resolutions in here.
2 separate grants, 2 separate resolutions. Yeah.
Yeah, they're 2 separate grants, so 2 separate resolutions. So we look for a motion to approve the SHPO Historic Restoration Fund Grant Resolution as presented in your packet.
I would make that motion, Mike.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 300. And then we look for a motion to approve the SHPO Survey and Planning Grant Certified Resolution as presented in your packet.
I would also make that motion.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 300. Juliet, thanks for the color and all your work on this, and Nita as well. I know you guys have both been working together on this, so really appreciate the efforts there.
You're welcome.
So we'll get that over to Craig and he'll get it all submitted. The attorney's getting us a little bit of info we needed as well. So we'll have that all ready to submit, I think tomorrow or the next day. Number 7, 113 Pendleton Hill Road well. So I've been wanting to make sure that I keep the selectmen informed. We've talked about the fact that there is a lot of activity percolating in the economic development zones. And we've talked a lot about water. We've talked about sewer. And we've been trying to really be planful about how we manage this, knowing that there's development that's percolating and coming forward. So as we are continuing to work on things, yet not necessarily gain a lot of ground towards mass infrastructure, people continue to progress with their plans. So what you have is a request to drill a well over at, I think it's called Kingdom of the Hawk, which is really the vineyard that's located across from the old Kreider property. It's the old Kreider property there that's coming off 95.
Yep.
I'm describing that right, Juliet, right?
Yeah, it's not a request to drill a well, though.
It's a request to,
It's your right of first refusal to operate the non-community water system that they're
right.
going to create by having a
Sorry.
well.
Yeah, sorry. So they're going to so basically we don't have a public water supply ready to go for them right now. They need water, so they're going to need to drill a well. We're not situated to operate the public water supply. So basically what it says is that we're going to pass on the ability to operate the public water supply. And that's really what we need to do here. I mean, we don't want to hold these people up from their development. I will say that what I think we need to do here, and as it's becoming more apparent that there's going to be funding available for all sorts of different things with all of these rescue packages and all of this infrastructure monies that's coming out. And that I think we really should be engaging with probably Westerly being the closest person right there and starting to put a more viable plan together for them supplying water. They have agreed to supply water to a couple of these places. I think we've talked about this in meetings. So they had said that they would be able to supply water to the vineyard. They would be able to supply water to a couple of the other people, not all of our economic development area, unless they have another source of water. I have talked with DPH. They did not seem closed-minded to us somehow if we had the means to allow Westerly to tap into some water over here so that they could serve our businesses. But I think these are conversations that need to be had from a planning perspective. I know Juliet agrees with that because we've talked at length about this stuff. So for tonight's purpose, I just wanted to make sure the selectmen were aware, and we can certainly vote on passing on our right of refusal on the ESA for operating this well that they this water supply that they're going to implement. So I just wanted to have a discussion about it and then probably put a vote on there just so we have something in the minutes to reflect at this point. Yes.
So this is the paper that we received late this afternoon, right? That I'm looking at. This is what we're talking about, correct?
You received a blank copy of it in your original packet, and then Juliet filled it out and sent it to us. Actually, I don't think you received it blank. It just wasn't fully filled out.
Yeah, there's a part for you to do. So I put your part in other words, your name, that you're an ESA. It's a confusing form because it's really meant for public water supply system providers like SQUA. They would be the ones that would really have the, if they had a line nearby, they would be filling this out. But since we are the ESA, we oddly, as an ESA, don't actually have any public water supply systems. That's unusual. Stonington and North Stonington are one of, two of the only ones that have the ESA for their towns, but don't own and operate a public water supply system. We used to in part, but now SQUA takes care of that for us. So it's sort of a formality, this form, because it's already recognized by the Water Utility Coordinating Commission, if I'm getting their name right, WUC, that we aren't going to operate anything, and that there is no line nearby. They know that we don't have the staff or the expertise to run a water system until at such time we decide that we want to do that, and we hire people and have a water company. But we don't have that. We're not going to have that within the time that these people need water, obviously. So the form isn't really geared for our situation. So that's why I added that sentence at the bottom that just sort of explains that.
This says, yeah, that the town is the ESA provider. There's no existing public water system for the applicant to connect to, and it's not feasible for the town to own and operate this public water supply community well. So that's the reason we would sign off on that.
And it's actually a non-community well because it's not residential. It's commercial. So we have quite a few of these non-community wells that are considered satellite water systems, non-connected satellite water systems. And that doesn't mean that they can't be connected in the future. That could happen. We could choose to do that, but that's something typically the town is going to pay for, or a very interested SQA or some other water company that may have a vested interest in developing new wells, and they might, look into that. And the WOOC plan that was approved and published in 2019, so it's new, did say that this work really needs to be done when you do your POCD, that you need to plan for these utilities. And they admitted that there weren't any real regulations in place to address, the minimum standards for these water systems, or when they should connect, or how to do all this, because they're just looking into that whole regional water supply thing. They recognize that we don't want all of these satellite non-connected wells. It doesn't make any sense, that they should be connected. But, we're not there yet. And they did compliment the town, DPH and DEP complimented us for thinking about this, for trying to plan for it. That's a dream. Most people are just reactive to something that's come before you. But, there are a few interested parties looking at our economic development district, and the other opportunity is to have the private party pay for the water line extension, or to connect all the wells. So we really do feel we need to jump on this sooner than later.
So, I mean, that's kind of a long story about where we're at and where we might need to be heading. But the deal before us is that I just wanted to get the selectmen's approval to sign off on this form to basically indicate that we're not planning to operate their public water supply.
So Mike, if it's a private entity putting a well on their own property to service their own people and no one else, then why are we involved? I don't understand why we're involved in this.
Because this is a good situation for the town to be in, because we are the exclusive service area owner of anyone's water where there isn't somebody else that oversees that water supply. So as Juliet said, like, you've got SQA who, supplies to Kingswood and Meadowwood and us here at Town Hall. And so they have that, we've given them that right for that water, but we haven't given anyone the right in this area and anywhere else in town. And that's, that was previous administrations who kind of fought for us to have that right. So if somebody wants to do that, we have to give them permission. We still
have the exclusive service area, but we get to choose who owns and operates the system. So.
That's right.
So
that's why.
Is this strictly commercial? Because obviously where I live in the northwest part of the town, I put a well in, and I didn't know, I don't know if I had to go through all this at the time. It was 18 years ago, but is this something that everyone does, or just commercial?
No, if you are putting in a well and it's anticipated to serve a certain amount of people, like gas stations, restaurants, hotels, they become these community or non-community wells, or there's different categories. There's non-transient community well, transient community well. I'll direct you to the water supply plan to learn about all that, but they get a designation. And if they get big enough, then they become a large scale community water system or public water supply system. But no, it's not everybody in town. But there is a recent law that was passed that says if you have your own well, but a public water supply is nearby or comes in front of your property, that you have to tie in. And then you can see on that form that unless you can provide a really good reason why that shouldn't happen. So, but this for us is typically only going to occur in our water sewer area that we designated in the POCD. We're not looking to expand.
And we've been informing these like the gas station folks, and these folks will be informed, like we are working on trying to provide public water, and that when that does happen, they are going to have to tie in, and there is going to be a cost associated with it. So we've been making them aware. We don't want anybody to be surprised by if that were to happen. But again, these people can't wait. They're working, they're trying to get their business open. So
as part of their approval, they have to show water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So any other questions on this? Would I get a motion to approve sign off of the Kingdom of the Hawk property address 113 Pendleton Hill Road application to operate their public water system form?
Mike, I'll make that motion. I don't have the paperwork in front of me to read what you just said, so I will piggyback on your statement and make that motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So we'll sign this form and get it over. Juliet, thank you for your time on all this stuff.
Yep.
With that, we'll move on to agenda item number 8. So Bob, I don't know if you want to lead in with this, and then I've got a couple comments, but it's up to you how you want to do it. You've been the liaison for this group. Thank you for putting your time into this. I appreciate it. You are muted. Okay.
Yeah, I was waiting for the little girl who's next door decided to stop ringing my front doorbell, so I was waiting for her to stop ringing it before I turned my mic back off. Anyway, with that said, yeah, so we met again last night. We had the realtor come in and speak to the group again. We've asked him to be more direct his efforts toward more of a school-based tenant versus a business-based tenant. I don't know whether I do know, actually. I don't think the committee felt strong about some of the possible tenants he had lined up so far as a potential tenant. I also asked the chair, since the Connecticut Coastal Academy has showed quite a bit of interest in the past, I asked the chair to reach out to them and just ask them how serious their intentions are. I mean, I don't want to drag this committee along knowing that we have a potential person that could move in and do 90% of what we'd like to have done, or if they're not interested, let's move on to something else. So I think we'll know more at our next meeting. Jennifer Dayton is the chair, and she's reaching out to Pam Patemry today, I believe. So we'll know more in a few days. But I think that we need to move. We need to get going on this thing. We're 4 months into it already, and we want to get something done. Obviously, the town wants to get something done. We don't want to go into our next budget season without having some sort of income or a definite solution on this building. So that's where we are.
Thank you, Bob, and good work with the committee. I know they've been very dedicated and interested in the topic and have a lot of good ideas and enthusiasm, which is great. I just would add, having seen some of the tenant, so I would say with the realtor, they've been very active, and I agree that there needs to be more of a focus on actual education groups. I think that they actually had come forward with upwards of 6 potential occupants. And I just want to remind the public, the realtor was contracted just to look at the small portion of the middle school wing, the part that Lighthouse wasn't going to take. So it was only about 10 classrooms in the kitchen. And they're willing to help us out with more of the building, but if they had interest. So they really had about 6 folks who were interested. However, those types of people it does seem that there's not there's not a consensus or interest from the community on having businesses in there that have ancillary education components. So in other words, they're willing to do education to get into the building, but it's not their primary business. So I did also check with the library because I wanted to make sure that we were I wanted to understand the direction that things were heading in, if how they would feel about it if there were a business. For instance, one of the examples was a furniture repair place, and they were willing to do some classes on furniture repair. And so I gave them a couple of examples like that, and the library board came back and they weren't very favorable to it. They said basically they would prefer, it sounded like really more just education focused. So, I mean, I have to say I'm kind of disappointed because I feel like it could have been a really good idea and good match and a really vibrant situation over there with some of these groups. But with all that being said, given the sentiment that I'm hearing from the library as well as the committee last night, and I think it's an uphill battle. So what I would like to do is direct the realtors. I would just direct the realtor to say, listen, I wouldn't bother even entertaining anybody like this anymore, and just specifically just education, because I think he's wasting his time. And I have to credit them. They have done a good job of marketing the property. It's just unfortunately the types of folks that we've gotten are just not going to be a match for what the community is looking for. So unless there's any disagreement on that, I was going to direct the realtor that way tomorrow. Go ahead, Bob.
I think that's a good idea, Mike, but also I wanted to bring up that something else mentioned at the committee was that we discussed the possible grant that we put in a couple of weeks ago to do an upgrade on the 2-story wing, as well as I think new windows, new roof, and to have monies to possibly demo the 1-story building, and with monies left over, possibly do some sort of a park-like area where the 1-story building now stands. So I think Jennifer Dayton, who's had a lot to do with that, felt that we were going to get an answer on that in the next week or two. So we've kind of put the brakes on a little bit, seeing where we're going with that grant. And once we have that information, then we can tie that into looking for a possible sale of the building or a lease of the entire building. So.
Yeah, I think the monies that we applied for, just so everyone's clear too, like that grant, the one thing we didn't include was cost of the parkscape. That was not included. There was a rendering that details what it could look like, that I think will help our grant application, but those funds were not applied for, but because we didn't have numbers on that. But I mean, there's so many funding opportunities that are going to be coming out, so I think it's a possibility. So with that being said, I'm going to go back to the realtor. I'm going to tell him to tell these folks who had expressed interest that there's, that's just not going to be a fit, and that, hopefully by the time there's the next meeting, he'll have some more info on actual education facilities for the committee. I did forget, I did want to add an agenda item. I had forgotten at the beginning of the meeting. If I could just make a motion to add, I just wanted to give an update on the tax collector vacancy. So if I could just make a motion to add agenda item, I'll just add it here, I guess, 8A, tax collector vacancy update.
I'll second that motion.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I just wanted to update the.
Before you move off of the Education Center Subcommittee, are we going to talk about the zone change?
Oh, thank you, Christine. Yes, thank you. I apologize. Yes, I know that was something, in order to keep things moving, that it makes sense that we approach planning and zoning to do an official zone change so that the property can be used for education purposes, which is right. I mean, that's basically what we're looking for.
I think it's private education, private schooling, Mike.
Add
Right.
educational facility to a use in the zone. You're not changing the zone.
Add educational facility to a use in the zone, not to change the zone. Should we motion to send that to request to planning and zoning, or is it enough just for the selectmen to nod their heads and I'll just send a letter? What do you want me to do? I should motion.
I'm in agreement for you to do that, Mike, so.
Yeah, maybe I should motion, because the planning and zoning likes sometimes to see that on their request that so we'd look for a motion as just described. And so if I could have that motion, then I'll send a letter to planning and zoning and try to get on their next agenda, because there's such a process for this whole building. I mean, it's going to go, the whole town process just takes time. So we just want to stay in front of this, so that if we do have a prospective tenant or a buyer, that we're ready to go as best as we can be.
That makes sense.
So you make that motion, Bob, as I
I
described?
will make that motion as you described it, yes.
Second? I'll second. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you, Christine, for remembering that. I forgot.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. Okay, so yes, tax collector vacancy. I just wanted to make you aware, we had I think it was Friday, we said that was the date we would start reviewing applicants. I would like to let you know that I'm not sure if you're aware, you probably are, that we've been very thankful that Preston, the town of Preston's tax folks have been helping us out on a once a week basis. So we are not falling behind. We're processing things, we're collecting. Christine has done a really great job of stepping in to kind of keep things rolling. So we appreciate that. We do have a number of applicants. So last time around, I think the hiring team was Nita, Antoinette, and Christine, if I remember correctly. I just wanted to reaffirm, I have no problem with that group again, but I wanted to make sure the selectmen, I just wanted to talk to you guys before we just kind of went forward on interviews, so.
Yeah, I had no problem with that, Mike.
Okay. So if that's all right, Nita, you and Christine can collaborate and figure out times for the candidates that we have. And hopefully we'll get some interviews going next week.
Thanks.
And okay, so I just wanted to give an update on that.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 9. So our traffic commission has met a couple of times. And as we had said, we would bring updates with regards to the traffic commission as needed. And I think this is going to be a great group. They're very, so Steve Sawyer has taken on the role of chair. Some of you maybe know Steve. He's involved in the fire company, very professional, and running a very good meeting. So there's been good dialogue with the group, and really the only item that so far that they took up was the parking on Miller Road. This was brought to our attention with the new Tri-Town Trail, that we've got a situation where at times there's a lot of folks going to the trail, which is great, but there's parking kind of happening on both sides of the road, and there's not necessarily enough parking over in the trailhead area. So what they recommended was for me to contact the group about expanding the parking lot and to have no parking signs installed on the north side of the road and only allow parking on the south side of the road. So I have been in touch with the Dennis Main, who's in charge of Avalonia, and discussed this with him. So I think they were going to talk about expanding the lot over there. And meanwhile, I think Joe was going to work on the signs to make sure that we get that going. But I just wanted to update the selectmen, and if you have any feedback or on any of that, now would be a good time to share it.
So Mike, I have feedback. I've hiked over there when on busy days, and especially during COVID, when there wasn't much you could do but hike or, canoe, whatever we could do outside. And luckily we live in a town where we could do a lot of it. But I've seen the parking situation. If you weren't there to be one of the 6 cars that could get in the lot, you're on that road. And Miller's it's one of our roads that's not that wide. I mean, 2 cars can pass if there's nobody else there, but when you have cars on both sides, it's a 1-car situation. So, and I'm sure it's a pain in the neck for the residents that live in that area too. So, I mean, if they were going to have any kind of company, I mean, there's 4 cars parked in front of their residence, it'd be tough to park their own company. So I think it's a good idea. When I read it in the booklet we got, or the material that we got for this meeting, it made sense to me. I'm not sure about was it a tree on Boom Bridge? I'm not Boom Bridge.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I mean, whatever Joey Rubino is the tree warden, if he says that there's an issue, then that's fine with me. Can you tell me, not to get off the subject, can you tell me, can we discuss tonight where we are with, and have they discussed implementation of the speed humps in the village, which should be
Yes.
coming up?
Thank you. Yeah, we can talk about this under this item, Bob, and I know you had mentioned you want to talk about this. There isn't really an update for me to give you. As you know, the highway foreman has been out. He is slated to return next week, hopefully. So I will hopefully have a better update for you on that at our next meeting. So I don't have an update at this meeting on that.
Did you, you did meet with Donnie, and I'm not sure also it was in the meeting though, you did go and discuss in the fall location, how many we had. Is that can you do a report on that down, soon, hopefully?
Yeah, we can. So I guess my question would be, so yes, I can. I had met with Donnie and DJ, and we identified spots for those. I guess my question would be, we did that before we had a traffic group. Perhaps as a courtesy, I should make them aware of what we're planning in case they wanted to have any feedback on that. I think that might be at least the kind thing to do, just because
Bringing them into the loop is fine. I think as a selectman, we agreed to have speed humps put in. So as long as we don't have a decision saying now that we're not going to put speed humps in.
Yeah.
But I think if they wanted to weigh in on, if they have any expertise on location or however, I mean, that's fine to keep them in the loop since we have a committee. But, I mean, that decision was made by the selectmen back in the fall, and I would hate to go back on that decision, so.
Yeah, I don't think that we'd look to do that, but I think including them just so there's, if they have any feedback on it, or, they might have good ideas about it. So I will look to make sure that you have an update on that at the next meeting, Bob.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on the traffic commission? All right, budget discussion. So we all have been party to the budget process, and we all heard the Board of Finance marathon meeting last Wednesday. I wanted to just talk with the selectmen about your thoughts based on, it's in the Board of Finance's court right now, but I think I heard a lot of feedback at the Board of Finance meeting, and I wanted to see if the Board of Selectmen had any reaction or wanted to talk about anything as it relates to the budget. Go ahead, Nita.
Okay, so we still have the possibility of getting this done in May. Do you think that, have you had a chance to talk to Dan Spring? Do you have a sense that tomorrow night they may come together? Or are we going to, what's your feeling about what we have to do at this point?
So, well, there's two points that you just made. So no, I haven't talked to Dan about that. My first comment back would be, I would say it's the responsibility of the Board of Finance to get something done tomorrow night. And then we will talk about where we go from there. I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I would hope that they would be able to get it done so we can stay on a reasonable track here. As far as, I wanted to just talk more with you guys about if you wanted to make any sort of suggestions with regards to the budget.
So Mike, looked at the budget again after listening to that 4-hour marathon. Unfortunately, I didn't sit through it as you guys did. I got to watch it in a 4-part mini-series, as I've said to some people, but it's an hour at a time. It was a long meeting, and I felt bad for the participants because you could see they were all very tired at the end. But I did go through, and I also congratulate Joe Gross for staying to the end too. But I went through some information Joe gave me a few weeks back that I've looked at, suggested cuts he had thought. I also just heard him say before the meeting that he did not want us to cut the budget anymore, even though he did give me some recommendations back when. I've looked through the budget. They didn't give us any definite feedback on where they thought there was an area for us to cut. was pretty much just, the number they used was $20,000, and it was kind of like given to us to determine where we wanted to lose $20,000, but it wasn't said that we had to. I mean, listening to that meeting, there was a lot of mixed messages on whether we should cut the budget or whether the monies were there as we rounded up mill rates, and then that extra monies were going into the undesignated fund. So in my opinion is, at this stage, I would give it back to the Board of Finance tomorrow for them to have further discussion and hopefully close in on a final budget.
Nita?
Oh, well, I would definitely have to agree with that. I think that it was, at the end, it was kind of very hard to think about the whole meeting, because it was so mixed up, just totally mixed up. I'm just wondering if there's anything we can do to help them. I don't know if they really understand that we really have 2 more weeks where we could really get this done in May, because of the way the May dates are and everything like that. We could still do it. I think I don't know how we influence them, that we want to see what happens at this point. I don't believe that if we just take out $20,000 of this piece and that piece, that's going to make a difference to all those people in there, in the Board of Finance. I really don't think so. If you see, either of you see something that would really make a big change, let me know, let us each other know that we have it. We don't have much left.
So Nita, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Bob.
On your point, Nita, so the numbers that Dan and Spring were mentioning were much bigger numbers than $20,000 to move the needle. So to take out $20,000 just arbitrarily, just to take it out and possibly hurt a line item down the road, and not move the needle at all on the mill rate, doesn't make any sense to me. It's just a token gesture to say we did something. And
I agree.
So I don't agree to it. Now, if someone can come forward with something solid that makes sense, then I'd look at it. But at this point, I don't see that happening.
Okay. I guess I'm struggling a little bit with it because first of all, I appreciate Joe Gross's comments that, I mean, this budget is so far away from what we wanted it to be anyway, and that, we have given as best as we can. But I also am sensitive to the fact that, it's a reval year, and I know there's certain people that are going to be affected differently than other people, with regards to the budget. So I think we want to be as sensitive as possible. But I mean, ultimately, we have a zero budget besides debt. I mean, that's what we've put forward. The debt number was agreed upon separately. And when you look at between capital and general government, there's really no increase there. So it's a zero budget that we've produced. So, I mean, I appreciate the feedback you guys have, and I don't think we ought to do anything then. If that's the feeling of the board, then I think let the Board of Finance continue to deliberate on it. I think it is important that we move this forward to people for consideration. So I hope that they work diligently to settle on something. I mean, I know there was a lot of talk, and there's really not too many more decisions that they have to make. That's why I don't see any reason it shouldn't be able to move forward. They've kind of talked about everything. So yeah, go ahead, Nita.
Well, I think both of you know that I don't really look at the social stuff on the websites. And we had so little attention at the meeting that we held, even though we worked hard to try and get people there, et cetera. So Mike, do you see that people are upset, or is it just, I'm just curious, are you getting a lot of backlash in any way?
I'm not hearing that, Nita, but here, I just know how things play out. And that's why I want to make sure we're doing our best to accommodate. And when you look at some of the folks who are very vocal, and we know who those folks are, they tend to go to like a social media and really make an outcry about their unhappiness about things. And then that multiplies whether there's truth in it or not. And it ultimately could just result in non-passage of a budget, which is not what we want to see. You know, I think we've made great sacrifices and compromises with this budget. I don't like the budget really, but I mean, I will support the budget because this is what we're trying to get done. I mean, I've come to terms with the fact that this budget year is a sacrifice. That's just really what it is. It's not a forward planning budget. I've said that with other budgets, and that has been the trend over the last year or two, but this one really isn't. But given the fact that we took from the undesignated fund last year and there's a commitment to have to repay that, you know, I think we just have to make that sacrifice. But so my point was that I want to appeal and appease as many of the masses as possible, so that way we can get a passage. But to Joe's point, who spoke at the beginning of the meeting, you know, we don't want to just sacrifice the budget we need, just, you know, and I mean, I think we're at that point. I mean, you know, it's nickels and dimes here, you know, there's really nothing left to take. I mean, you know, if I'm put against the wall, I mean, there's places I could identify if we had to, but it's not going to be good for the town.
When you identify those places, Mike, you're not saying there's extra monies that we don't need. You're saying that we're going to have to cut, which means it's going to create a hardship down the road. I mean, I don't know anywhere where there's extra monies that we say, okay, we put in 10, but really we need 5. No, if we put in 10, we need 10. If you go down to 8, that means we're going to go looking for 2,000 somewhere down the road. So I think, as Joe mentioned, it's time to be administrators of the budget and not just try to pass a budget that, just not put a budget forward that you know will pass. Put a budget you know that we need to run the town in the best way we can. So we've made a lot of cuts, especially on the capital side. It's not planning for the future. It's getting through this reval year with as little damage as possible to the taxpayer, which I agree. I mean, my taxes are going up. Most people's taxes are going up. It happens, but I think we've been pretty diligent as far as at least the general government budget. I'm not going to comment on the Board of Ed budget, although I do think it's a solid budget. But I just think that to ask us to go back and lose more money just for the sake of losing money makes no sense to me.
Okay.
I would also mention, I don't know if I should mention this, but if it were to take money out of that $10,000 that we have for the Hewitt Farm, then we would be out the window on that.
Well, yeah, we need that for that grant. That's the match we need. So we can't,
Exactly.
that's not an option. That would not be, yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, all right. So I think we've talked about it and I think we're all on the same page. So
I think one of the things that kind of separates the Board of Finance a little bit is they were talking quite a bit about, you know, getting them the final numbers on the rescue package coming in and when that's actually going to happen, which would give them guidance. Unfortunately, seems like in the past 4 or 5 years, we're always waiting for something. We're waiting for the new governor's budget. You know, we're always waiting for, but in the past, we've always moved forward with the budget and then let things play out as they happen. So I understand where they're coming from with that. I wish we had the information tomorrow on the rescue package and where we could use it, where we can't, but we don't have it. So
that's a really good point, Bob. And that's the approach we've always taken as a board since we've been together. And I think it's been a prudent one because, you know, years ago, we would end up not, you know, we had years where we didn't pass a budget till November. That is not the way to run a town. We cannot, you know, is it possible? Yeah, it's possible. That is not, we do not want to be doing that. There are so many complexities when something like that happens. It is not a good idea to be in that situation. So we need to move a budget forward. We need to operate the town, and those rescue funds, we'll have those discussions. And hopefully that opens the door on some of these things that we did have to cut. But, you know, we'll talk about it when the time comes. All right, so we can move on from this topic then? Okay. Next up is the Selectmen's Expense Line Policy Discussion, number 11. So it was brought up at the last meeting that we should put together a policy for the Selectmen's expense line, which I agree with. Having come in myself new, there really wasn't necessarily guidance on, how the Selectmen's expense line should be used. I just want to mention, though there wasn't a policy in place, each year the Selectmen put together a budget in which we allocate certain items for the Selectmen's expense line. And so I did pull together, the past ones where, we have X amount for sponsorships and X amount for employee appreciation. And so, in my role, I've tried to use my own judgment to apply those funds based on what those categories are. I think that this will be really helpful to have a policy so that it's not just necessarily the judgment of the first selectman, because, that can, people can have different opinions about things. It'll provide a little bit more guidance to, as far as like how the funds could be utilized within a certain amount. But I mean, the budgets will continue to be made. And so, those budgets should be executed in the way that we formulate them. So what the policy basically said that I put forward, and we can just discuss it, was if there was an expense over $100, that it should come to the Board of Selectmen for approval. And then any future recurring expenses over $100. So there are recurring expenses now that are over $100 for like phones and stuff like that. But so if there's any future commitments that are made, we would bring those to the Board of Selectmen. So with that, I'd open it up for discussion. Go ahead, Bob.
I'll make a couple of suggestions. One is, I think moving forward, we should have on the agenda a line item that just says Selectmen expense discussion. There may be times, it's kind of like putting old business and new business on a line item. What you get there, a lot of times there's nothing on there. If there's been expenses since the last meeting, we can discuss them. If the first selectman or one of the other selectmen, since it's really not the first selectman expense line, it's a selectman expense line. If one of the selectmen has something that's coming up that he or she knows about, they want to discuss with the other selectmen and get an approval, that'd be the time to do it. So everything is out in the open, everybody knows what's going on. So if there's any pushback, we get it at that point. So I would suggest moving forward, hopefully with this administration, if not, maybe with the next administration, that we have a line item that says selectmen expense. And then since it might be sometimes that there's nothing there to discuss, nothing's happened since the last meeting. Secondly, I think I'd like that amount dropped to $50 from $100. Unless there's a reason, I'm not the first selectman, so I don't see the day-to-day activity. So unless there's something that you know about that I don't know about that typically arises for, $50 or $60, that doesn't make sense for us to comment on, and I'd listen to that, but $50 seems like a good number to me.
Yeah, I mean, my only comment is that I think it's, listen, I'm flexible. It doesn't really matter to me what we do. I think from the CEO of the town perspective, I mean, it seems like a pretty low amount at $50. I think you want to give some autonomy to your first selectman to be able to, make decisions that are, up to $100. That still seems pretty low, actually. But again, I'm not gonna fight on any of this stuff. I think it's, I'm not gonna be here in November, so, and I don't see any expenses really happening that I'm aware of, upcoming during the rest of my term, really, anyway. So, I would probably stick with the 100. I think it's going to give a little bit more flexibility, which I think you want your CEO to have some level of flexibility. But,
What's your feedback on having a line item on the agenda?
I mean, what I think, so I don't know. I mean, I guess it could happen. It just seems like a little bit of micromanagement to me. Again, if you have a policy in place and there's an amount that's greater, then that would, of course, have to come and be put on the agenda. I don't know that it needs to recur on the agenda. I'm not really for stuff like that. Like, I mean, just in general, like if you look at our agendas for the last 4 years, like we don't have items that are like standing besides minutes and tax refunds. I don't really like favor that. But again, I'm not opposed to it. If it's something you guys want to see, I don't have a problem with being open to that kind of thing. I mean, whatever you think. I think the policy itself kind of takes care of it. And the fact is, there's a budget, and even this year, when you look at what we've put forward for the selectmen's expense line, I mean, we slashed it. So there's really not going to be expenses beyond what we already kind of know about, which is, I mean, basically the types of things that we had in there in prior years' budgets are not going to even be able to be done. So there won't be employee appreciation. There won't be sponsorship, those kind of things that we had in there. Those won't occur.
So I just think though, with the discussions that have happened over the last 2 months or so on some of the, when people have researched expenses on the selectmen line and have come back and asked questions on some of the purchases, why not just have it out there and put it out there? I mean, as you said, if you're going to be here until November, we're talking 7 more months, 6 more months. Why not put it out there and have full, I hate to use the word transparency because everybody uses it. So, but I think why wouldn't you have full information out there on a line, on a subject rather that's been already contested, it's been questioned. So why not do the 180 and go the other way? And yes, it is kind of a micromanaging tool to have the town, but then again, with the town, we work for the town. It's town money. It's tax money that comes from citizens. It's not like a private business where it comes from earnings. It's taxpayer dollars, and I think the taxpayers like to see where they're spent. Now, if we have it on the agenda and each week we go by and there's nothing to discuss, then it kind of becomes like those lines, like I said, with old business and new business. A lot of times we just fluff over those lines because there's nothing going on. So,
well, I don't want to stand in the way of doing it because people will use that to say that I'm not trying to be transparent, which is absolutely false. It would be a false statement. My concern is that we're in a position right now where we need to get people that feel like they would be motivated to run for the position of first selectman right now, right? We don't know who's going to run. We think that we know some people that might. I think we need to give that position some credit. And I, first of all, don't feel like that's happened a lot of the time. I think that there's a lot of politics that seem to come into play on some of this stuff. And I think that I just want to try to see people excited and motivated to run for the position, I guess. And that's concerning to me. It is concerning to me. Not only are we doing something like this, but now the Board of Finance has gone and reduced the salary substantially of the first selectman coming in. At the same time, we've already minimized the help in this office where we, back when we don't have a full-time support staff anymore. So we've already made major reductions in the selectman's office. I'm just concerned about the direction we're going in with all this stuff, but I don't want to get too far off track. And I'm concerned about it, not for a transparency angle. I mean, I think if it's something you feel would be important and helpful, then let's just do it. Cause I really don't want anybody to mistake my words on this. I'm just concerned about kind of the future of the position and the direction we're heading in. I don't know if that makes any sense, but Nita.
Could I just sort of suggest a middle
Sure.
path from this, which is I agree with you, Mike, about the $100, and Bob, I think $50 is just one night of somebody going out to eat. It's I don't think that it's too small. $100, and then the opposite of that, what I would say would be that you just put it on the agenda for a while and see if it's worth having it there. And that's, would be my sort of halfway suggestion for both of you.
That's
And I
fine.
think plus, Mike, as far as you saying, the next administration, when they come in, they'll make their own decision. If they decide that they don't want to, I mean, Nick used to do correspondence. We don't do correspondence. So, I mean, each administration makes up their own agenda on what they think is important to put on and what isn't. So I guess I'm saying like, need this is maybe a trial run to use it now from now to the end of your term and see how it goes. But
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, if you, listen, you both feel that it should be on there. I would definitely not oppose it. So I'm just explaining to you my perspective on it, I guess.
I'll acquiesce to Nita on the $100 if she gives me the agenda item.
I was trying to make it a balance here. I'm not really, terribly concerned one way or the other. I just wanted it to be something that would work so that it will be simpler.
The spirit of compromise.
That sounds fine. So we'll put it on future agendas. And the only other question I didn't list on the policy that I think we probably should address is mileage, because technically it could easily happen that mileage is accrued in excess of $100 by the time we get to a meeting. So I don't know how the selectmen wish to handle that. I don't think there's a way to handle that, really.
Well, Mike, could you give us some insight onto where it is that you would spend $100 worth of gas? I mean, do you go back and forth to Hartford? Do you go to Stonington, Ledyard, Preston? What are we talking from the time you leave the house or when you leave the town hall to go somewhere and come back to town hall? How are you gauging mileage?
So when I put in for so first of all, the town has benefited immensely from me because I don't put in for mileage unless I drive somewhere far. So any of my local travel, I've used my own gas, not to mention all the other things that I've reached into my own pocket for town expense wise. But when I do put in for mileage, if I were to drive to Hartford, I would put in for mileage for that. And it doesn't take long, a couple of trips to Hartford to equal more than like $100 in mileage and it is from the town hall to the destination back to the town hall.
So how many times in non-COVID times, because we're in COVID now, so you're not going to have it much, but how many times, we'll say in the previous year, would you go to Hartford? Is it a weekly, twice a month, 3 times a month, every day for 2 weeks? How many trips to Hartford do we see typically?
Oh, it depends. I mean, it depends what's going on. And it's not just Hartford. I mean, like we used to have meetings with CCM, CCM legislative meetings, cost, council of small towns, if there was testimony that had to be given in Hartford, if it was meetings with, obviously our local legislators, but I can't tell you, Bob, because it just depends on what's going on. So all I'm saying is that I don't want to set us up for a policy that's going to, that is something that will come up. Inevitably, we're going to get a reimbursement, maybe not while I'm here, and maybe it'll change after I'm gone. I don't know, but that's like, $120 worth of mileage or something like that. And the other thing is like, if you don't put your mileage all together, like if you have a couple of months worth of mileage that's been hanging around, that would add up to over. So I don't know if you want to put an exception on there for mileage, or I just want to bring it up.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, I would suggest that we put an exception on there for mileage, and I would put a number on mileage of $200. I don't think that you'd see many mileage requests of $200, and I think if you're running your mileage requests, you can make sure that you keep it under that, so you submit them in early enough so that you haven't accrued that amount. Because I don't think you would see, like to your question, Bob, like you're probably not going to Hartford 4 times in a month. Probably not. I mean, I don't think I've done that. It does happen where I've gone far in a month, like especially the beginning of the year when there's a lot of conferences and things like that I have to attend. But again, like this is stuff that to me, you shouldn't have to worry about as the CEO of the town. Like, you should just be able to do this and not worry about it. But I'm bringing it up because I don't want there to be a question about it. You know what I mean? So, I mean, we could just put on the policy, you know, like an asterisk that says mileage is an exception to this rule or something like that. And then we can change it if you want down the road.
I'd be fine with that, Mike.
Okay. So why don't we move to approve the policy with the amendment with mileage being an exception to the rule? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, that's good. And I'll add it to, it'll be a recurring agenda item. The next item is the DERA grant extension. So we early on removed the electric truck from the budget, and having gone back and forth, you know, it was not the best practice to apply for a grant with the state like that and not, you know, take it. But when I talked to them about the fact that we had budget constraints, they were like, well, listen, don't withdraw your request. Why don't you try to postpone it? And I was like, all right, well, I don't know if we're going to be able to approve it, you know, next budget cycle either. But they understood that, you know, towns have budget constraints, and that, you know, there's no guarantee that it would necessarily happen next budget cycle either. But I just wanted to make the selectmen aware that we did put forward an extension for this. So in the event the next administration wants to pursue the electric truck, we still have the grant at our disposal. Now, if next time around you choose not to pursue the grant for the truck, you know, you may have to withdraw it at that time, or maybe you can extend it another time. I don't know. But I was happy they were at least, they had offered this to us as an option, and I wanted to accept that option so that way we didn't just walk away from it just in case something changes. So I just wanted to make you guys aware and let the minutes reflect that we have an extension. So I've been working with the state to just keep the extension going on that truck. Any questions on that? Okay. All right, number 13, tax relief program discussion. So the Board of Finance at their last meeting had brought up the idea of looking for tax relief programs for elderly and disabled. And there are statutes available that allow for such a thing to happen. I did include in the packet those verbatim how they read. I don't know what the pleasure of the selectmen is. I mean, we all heard the same thing from the Board of Finance. I don't know. If we were to implement something like this, it wouldn't happen this fiscal year because I think we would have had to implement it like in December. But you know, the flip side of this is anything you do like this means that there's going to be somebody else carrying more of a burden. And I'm just bringing that up for discussion. So I don't know what the pleasure of the selectmen is with regards to this. And I just put it in the packet because the Board of Finance had kind of directed us. And I think I asked them to motion to direct us, and they did do that to look into this. So
Mike, a couple of thoughts on that. I'm totally for some sort of a tax break for the elderly fixed income. I'm not saying that because I'm getting older, because I know it's an applied for. You have to still apply any grant you get. You have to apply for it. Any, not grant, but any, whether it be a farming reduction or any kind of forestry reduction, you have to apply. So a veteran reduction. So and as long as I'm in office in town, I wouldn't apply for something like that. But that doesn't mean I shouldn't push it forward for other people. I think that it's a great idea to do this. You know, when you talk about, as you just said, somebody has to pick up the slack. But I think about the older people who had kids in school, and then as they get older, their children are gone, and then younger parents always say to the older people, you know, you have to pay for our kids because someone paid for your kids. And I think it's the same thing with taxes. If as you get older and you're more on a fixed income, so yes, you maybe get some help with your taxes, and the younger people are helping you because when you were young, you might have helped the older people. So I think it's fair. So I'm looking at the I think the statute was it 129-12N, I believe. Since I don't have a printer anymore, I gotta go buy one. I don't have these papers in front of me. I'll go by memory. But I remember reading that, and there was a paragraph B that said, prior to the local administration of the municipality moving forward on this, they were to set up a 5-person board, no less than 5 people, made up of taxpayers, that had a 6-day limit on coming up with information on the best way to institute these policies, and to look and see what effect it did have on the town. Actually, overall effect was done on the town. So again, I don't have it in front of me, but if you look at that 129-12N and look at paragraph B, I think it explains that, and I'm not one to set up a bunch of committees, but it's as if it's got a 60-day life to it. I don't mind a committee for 2 months. And I think we have people in town that be willing to serve on that committee to look further into this.
Well, I'm not opposed to something like that, but I also would say we have a tax assessor who is incredibly knowledgeable and has time to do this work, in my opinion. So
That's fine too. I agree.
yeah, I mean, I think we could bring Daryl into a meeting and say, listen, I could direct him and say, this is something we want to do, come explain this to us. How is this going to work?
As long as we're not required by statute to form that committee, and I couldn't tell by the wording whether we were or not.
I'm just reading over it right now again.
Yep. It wasn't on our work, it was in the state website.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, well, we'll look into that to see if it's required or not then. Nita, what do you think?
I think it's worth looking at, but we have to be very careful because, we have to be sure that we're not taking it away from other people in town who have other problems with not enough money. So, but I think it's worth looking at.
I'm wondering as we talk about this, one of the suggestions, I think this is appropriate to talk about under this as well, that was made, and it's a little off topic. Back when we had our presentation from our Emergency Services Operation Committee was the potential tax relief for volunteers, for like firefighters. Do you guys want to look into that as well? I mean, I'm just wondering, because we're about to invest more in per diem, is there some validity? And this was I would say a best practice that we've heard of at other communities to retain more volunteers that are willing to respond. I'm just curious about your take on looking at that as well at the same time.
I think we should, Mike. I was on the state site and I saw where that was on there. It was in that same grouping of a possibility of, for tax breaks, tax freezes, and volunteers. So I think that we should look into that. That's why I was thinking of the committee, but if we're not obligated to form a committee and Daryl can do the work, then that'd be great.
Nita, do you agree to we maybe just have them look into that too?
Yes, I think that's fine. I think that's fine.
All right, so we'll direct Daryl to come to our next meeting and explain to us what would be necessary in order to, and what the impact would be to people if we did something like this, to the general public. So that'll be his next assignment. Okay, anything else on this topic for tonight or?
No.
Okay. I just had added number 14, future special meeting date discussion. I don't think that there's anything for us to discuss on this. I had put it on there not knowing where the Board of Finance would land. I don't think we still know where the Board of Finance will land. I want to remain hopeful they'll get the job done on Wednesday, and that we would then potentially set up a special meeting if necessary. So we could just talk, I'll reach out to you guys after that meeting and we'll talk about if we need a special meeting or not. Minutes?
Okay.
Mhm.
By the way, I have our agenda on my cell phone, so that's why I keep looking at it. I gotta buy a printer. I apologize. I'm very old school when it comes to paperwork. So, I make a motion that we approve the minutes from March 23rd, 2021 of the Board of Selectmen meeting as presented by Bailey.
Yes, but I had a question about adding in here in the animal shelter discussion, the part about the neighborhood and making contact with the neighborhood in this process. Remember that somebody suggested that on number 4, the animal shelter discussion?
Hmm. I'm not sure there was, I don't have a recollection that there was action there. Like, was somebody supposed to do something? I mean, I think it was a comment, but
It was a comment from the audience, and then I thought you said something about, you do something about it, so people, I think it's one of those things that when you wait until, well, I'll leave it if you don't think it's.
well, I just would leave it. I mean, I would rather leave it, but if I'm happy to make that, I'm happy to do that just as an aside, to make contact with, but I also think I'm waiting to hear from them, like if it's going to be feasible. They're doing some work. So,
Okay,
once it's a little more real.
leave it the way it is for now.
Okay.
That's all right.
Do you want to second Bob's motion then?
Yes, it was second Bob's motion.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the Board of Selectmen special meeting on March 26, 2021, as submitted by Bailey.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the Board of Selectmen special meeting, Zoom meeting on April 1st, 2021, as submitted by Bailey.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think this is the last one. I make a motion that we approve the minutes from the Board of Selectmen special meeting, Zoom meeting, April 6, 2021, as submitted by Bailey.
Further
Second.
discussion? I would just make an amendment to number 3 that town does not hold ownership of public water. That's not really the correct statement. I would say the town does not have a public water company ready to operate public supply. So I would just make that amendment.
Okay, I'll amend my motion then.
Second. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We skipped something though. There was the page that had the.
No, that's just the attachment that's included in there.
That was
Oh,
just,
okay,
that
all
was a
right.
meeting
So we-
call, that was all.
About
That's-
that. Okay, thank
Just a
you.
meeting call. Bob, by the way, if you want Bailey to print you out a packet, like until you have a printer, just let her know. She can do that.
Well, I'm going to Best Buy Sunday, so I better have one, hopefully by
All right.
Sunday. Yeah, when I was working, it was easy to do this stuff, but not so much now, so anyway.
Thank you for that. Bailey, we'll have public comments on agenda items.
Okay, Brian Rathbun, yeah, you're recognized.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Just a couple of things. On item 4, the paper I got says 35-acre parcel up at Button Road, and I know Bill kept mentioning 38 acres. I wasn't sure which it was or if that was just a mistake, but that's what I have on my paper. And on item 13, the tax relief program, I had looked at it a few years back, and I had brought it before the selectmen. And it never went anywhere. But if they're really serious about looking at it, when I look, because I'm still, when I try to print out the agenda, I still get all the pages. Anyways, one part of it says 65 years of age and older, and the other one says 70 years and older. I'm not sure what the difference is, but we'd have to look at that definitely.
Wasn't one of them a freeze, Brian, and one of them is a tax abatement?
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. All right. And I think the big important thing that I looked at when I looked at it years ago there, the income limits, that's probably the biggest thing. The income limits now, they were very low. And so anyways, I'm glad you're gonna pursue it and continue. And if it does go to a committee thing, I'd be willing to be on one, but I see you're gonna go with Daryl, that's fine too. And that's it. And I'm glad you're feeling better, Mike. You look better.
Thank you very much, Brian. I survived. I survived COVID. Me and Bob, Nita, you stay away from it. We don't want you.
All right, take care, guys.
Thanks.
And phone number ending in 9339, you're recognized.
It's Joe. Right.
I think so.
Okay, I'm unmuted, I believe, right?
Yes.
I'd like to know, just a quick question to Brian. I'd like to know what he wants to get from the Board of Selectmen with his comment about you, Mike. Because he doesn't usually say that. Hey, I want to mention $333,602 was deleted from your budget. That was deleted by the Board of Finance going into your budget by line items, either deleting or taking away, or adding, or whatever way they wanted to. 80% of your budget cannot be touched. That's your salaries, fixed charges, insurance, public safety, social security. Basically, only 20% of your budget can be looked into for changing. That's the maintenance, testing, capital, your membership for professional things, records and documents. That 20% don't allow you much money to play with. And going into the other 80%, I don't believe it. I do believe that your recommendation of talking to Daryl for that tax relief program, I support that 100%. And I think that should remain a committee of one. If you get any more in there, you're gonna get messed up. He'll take care of the whole thing for you. I have much things. I asked for the same thing I mentioned to the Board of Finance. Your administrators for a business. The business is the town of North Stonington. You can't put a budget out for whatever the heck the people want. You gotta put it out by what the business recommends and give it to them and what they should be able to take. What they can't take, they'll let you know. I also want to let the board know that on your budget, when I went to the Board of Ed's budget, I sit down with the superintendent and the business manager, and I had concerns, but they answered all my concerns. On your budget, I sit with Chris. And I think you gotta be known that she does one heck of a job above her responsibilities in solving the problems that I give her. And I still go to her, and I go to her more than you guys, because I think I can communicate better with her on that stuff. And I want you to also know that Friday was the last communication I had with Hartford. And they wanted to know exactly what I needed on the determination if the Board of Finance has the authority to go into a draft budget, one that has not been accepted by the town, and make individual line changes. I say they don't. And I say that after the budget has been passed by the governing body, they have the right to go through, move stuff around and do things throughout the year. They wanted to know exactly what my feelings were on it, what I wanted answered. And they're in the process of looking at that now. They did state that The one thing that they usually do is they give it back to the towns to interpret the way they want it. And I said, I don't accept that. If they ever give it back to me and I go to you, go to Board of Finance, and they give it to a town attorney, he has no more knowledge than I have on it. I want the definition to come from Hartford, and I want them to determine whether the Board of Finance has the authority to go into your budget as they did by line item, or do they just have it as I interpret, make recommendations to you, and their feelings giving it to you, and then you go in and do what you have to do, what you feel. So that's still coming, and it's gonna be a tough one to get the answer, because I think that things have been made in colonial era time frame, and they just never updated to the modern time period. So you guys have done a lot, but I tell you, I want to make it very clear. I don't support your budget, not because of you gentlemen. I don't support it because I don't believe the Board of Finance had the right to go in and make them decisions. And that's what I feel right now. It's a Board of Finance / Board of Selectmen budget. It's not your budget. And when the total 333,000 comes out of government budget period, I can't buy that. And when I go to the towns, I don't know how much support I'll get from the taxpayers and that, but at least I make my feelings known. And I thank you for giving me more than 2 minutes. I won't take up any more time, Mike, and I'm not going to give you a nice comment like Brian did, because I see you being tired of listening to me. No, I'm done. I thank you guys. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Joe. Okay, I think we have no more comments, so we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Further discussion? All those in favor?
aye.
Aye. All right, thanks, everybody. Good meeting. Have a good night.